After graduating from Harvard University, John Chapman and his 11-year-old brother made their way to Pittsburgh in search of their uncle who was living in Olean, New York, near the Seneca Indian tribe along the Allegheny River. The Seneca tribe were making their new home at Warren, Pennsylvania, on the third tract of land given to Chief Corn Planter, the nephew of Chief Red Jacket. The feared warrior had once been a powerful leader of the Six Nations during the American Revolution, and he was born unto his mother of the Seneca Wolf clan and his father, who was a Dutch farmer. After the Revolution, the chief knew that the tribe's future rested with the new United States government, and he began his pursuit of George Washington to seek asylum and safety. After fighting on the side of the new America during the War of 1812, the new president agreed to protect Corn Planter's tribe, and he gave Corn Planter his own kingdom, made up of about 1,500 acres in northwest Pennsylvania and southwest New York. Now Chapman, who had rafted up the Allegheny River from Pittsburgh, passed through Venango County into a white pine forest where the Holland Land Company, which was a group of Dutch investors who had bought over 3 million acres of land, had erected a grist mill, a sawmill, and cedar mills, and a few houses. Allegheny River was a natural waterway for rafting lumber, which was the county's main industry at that time, so sawing and rafting continued to about the 1800s until the Sunbury and Erie Railroad line was put in place. So according to the Cleveland Plains dealer, the pair crossed into New York and he found his uncle was gone and leaving behind a farm with an apple orchard. So Chapman took over the farm, and allegedly this is where his apple mission began. Now, he got along well with his new neighbor and the Corn Planter tribe, and the natives traded with him for medicine. And he worked the orchard, and he cut off hundreds of shoots from the apple trees to plant the following spring. But I think it's quite possible that he brought with him bagfuls of Rambo apple seeds, as they were commonly used for making cider and vinegar at that time. And the apples originated in the New Sweden colony on the Delaware River, which was brought to America from the Netherlands, which was the homeland of Emanuel Swedenborg, whose scientific teachings heavily influenced Chapman throughout his life. And they were the basis for Chapman's spiritual beliefs. So why did Chapman focus on apples, and why did he feel the need to walk the countryside planting seeds? Well, in the 1790s, there was no running water as we know it, so the Americans consumed copious amounts of apple cider, and they relied heavily on the enchantment of applejack during the rough times and the medicinal properties of the apple cider vinegar in the sick times. Cider was needed for pickling and canning food, so the sour Rambo apples were a hot commodity. Eventually, Chapman spent a winter near Broken Straw Creek in Warren County, and he visited the local cider mills there to collect the apple pulp to remove the seeds. And he bagged the seeds, and the following spring he began planting them along the foothills of the streams and the Allegheny River. So his decision to move to New York to find his uncle and plant seeds would change his life and his name forever. And based on my research, I think it was a calculated decision, for Chapman was the son of a man with means. Apparently he had a pretty keen business sense. I think he saw a need and a way to make money, and he may have been one of the first to live the American dream. But unfortunately, he couldn't stay in one place long enough to enjoy it, losing countless acres of land and orchards to unpaid taxes. As young America was built in the cities along the eastern seaboard, there was now a big push to homestead in the undeveloped lands in western Pennsylvania and Ohio. The land was free if one could get there and would commit to living there and developing the area. Also, as a homesteader, I believe they were required to plant 50 apple trees to keep their land. So I think Chapman saw this, decided to go ahead of the homesteaders to plant the apple seeds on the undeveloped land. When the seeds grew, he would sell the young trees or the orchards to the homesteader when they arrived. So after planting seeds along Broken Straw Creek, he was heading south, and by 1797, he was planting along French Creek in Venango County. And he remained in the area until 1804, when he continued downstream to Muddy Creek in Butler County and on into Fayette County and eventually back to Pittsburgh. It's unknown if Chapman actually planted Rambo apples along French Creek, but it is confirmed that he planted fruit trees, and while he was here, he had an account at Powers General Store in Franklin. And allegedly, the last known tree he planted was a Rambo, so it's very likely it was his apple of choice. And it's definitely the apple that Heron so vividly recalled. The last time we met, I told you the story of Leander Heron, who grew up on French Creek and later received the Congressional Medal of Honor for his time spent in the western frontier, who once wrote a letter home longing for summer Rambo apples from his hometown. In the same letter, he recalled his time after the War of the Rebellion, his time spent in Pennsylvania oil fields during the strange and wild days of 1870, the days of the Creek, full of enchantment, mystery, legends, and lore. In a story as only Heron could tell it, he was drilling on Patchell Run, and he ran out of engine oil. In dire need to continue drilling, he scooped up some Pennsylvania crude to grease the cylinder and the bearings on the engine. Now, along with him was the well's owner, Major Baum, who gave him the go-ahead to use the Galena oil, not knowing if the oil could withstand the high heat. And they found out that it did. It heated to a high temperature, it didn't destroy the engine, and so pleased with their discovery that Major Baum was telling everyone. And he told one of their other Civil War buddies, Charlie Miller. And Charlie worked at DeWoody's store in the city of Franklin. And I'm not quite sure exactly what happened after that, but young Charlie grew up to be this man, General Charles Miller, the eventual owner of Galena Oil Works, later to become a partner in Galena Signal Oil, which later became a subsidiary of Rockefeller Standard Oil, and today sometimes known as Valvoline. If indeed that conversation happened with Heron, he was at the pinnacle of another historic event. Now, by the time Heron was working with engine oil, Chapman had earned the name Johnny Appleseed, and his religious beliefs and appearance were legendary, because Chapman was self-sacrificing and caught up in the Swedenborg religion. He gave all his money and seedlings away to help the homesteaders. He could barely care for himself. He was without shoes, a hat, and his beard and hair was a bit grotesque. Little would any of them know that hundreds of years later, in a sleepy little town home to Galena Oil, at the confluence of French Creek and the Allegheny River, there would be an annual festival honoring the peculiar man and his enchanted apples. The festival would be the catalyst of many homecomings, gatherings, courtships, and marriages. Each year, the city of Franklin embraces the legend of Johnny Appleseed, and the locals look forward to the annual celebration the first full week in October. What makes it extra special is the co-founder, Sally McGath, was the great-granddaughter-in-law of Charles Miller.